When the Coen brothers were in the throes of writing their quirky gangster epic Miller's Crossing, grappling with the complex web of plot lines, they decided to take a break and write something simpler instead. And they ended up creating one of the most confounding, impressionistic, and utterly bizarre movies of their entire legendary career. The Coens combated writer's block by writing a whole new story about a writer suffering from writer's block. Barton Fink tells the relatively simplistic story of an acclaimed Broadway playwright who's brought to Hollywood in 1941 to write a schlocky by-the-numbers wrestling picture, and ends up having an existential crisis befitting of one of his highbrow plays. The Coens have insisted that they weren't trying to convey any one single message with Barton Fink, but in their ambiguous use of imagery, symbolism, and subtext, they managed to convey a dozen messages.
Come on, Bart! We're gonna go sneak into an R-rated movie!
It's called Barton Fink!
I can't. I told my dad I'd wait for him.
Barton Fink! Barton Fink! Barton Fink!
Since it grew out of their own creative struggles, Barton Fink is one of the Coen brothers' most self-reflexive films. It's a movie about the writing process and the complicated business of creative writing. The system of deadlines and quotas in professional writing is at odds with the necessity to wait for the muse to strike in order to produce great work. It examines the differences and similarities between high art like a stuffy Broadway play and low art like a wrestling movie for the masses. Fink's struggle to get his profound writing past the commercial mindset of the studio boss reflects the battle between art and commerce. The ruthless terms of Fink's contract and the devastating mental toll of his exhaustive page churning satirically critique the working conditions of creative professions. Fink's obsession with pioneering the theatre of the common man explores the relationship between self-congratulating out-of-touch intellectuals and salt-of-the-earth common folk. Fink is the quintessential Coen brothers protagonist. He's not as laid back as The Dude, he's not as confident as Llewyn Davis, and he's nowhere near as heroic as Marge Gunderson. He's an awkward, anxious, passive loser, the same character we've seen in Fargo's Jerry Lundegaard and A Serious Man's Larry Gopnik. He's the original prototype of the uniquely neurotic, somewhat autobiographical persona that the brothers have crafted over the years.
I'll show you the life of the mind! I'll show you the life of the mind! I will show you the life of the mind!
Barton Fink defies genre classification. It's been alternately described as a film noir, a horror movie, a buddy comedy, and a defining work of postmodernism. It's a movie about movie making, a story about storytelling. It's even been described as, pardon the butchered pronunciation, a Kunstlerroman, or an artist's novel, because the main drive of the story is Fink's evolution and maturity as a writer. It could just be called straight-up surrealism. There's something Kafka-esque about the way Fink's inner conflict manifests visually. As he worries about selling out by writing a formulaic genre script for an easy paycheck, Fink is plagued by mosquito bites all over his face and his wallpaper starts peeling off and oozing slime. Visually, Barton Fink isn't supposed to be an accurate depiction of the 40s. It's a movie about how art and culture reflect the world back at itself, so its aesthetic is a pastiche of various pop cultural representations of the 40s that have formed our collective memory of that era. Faded photographs, soldiers shipping off to war, the glitz of old Hollywood. The Hotel Earl is such a distinctive setting that it has to be symbolic of something, and it can be read in a few different ways. The rotting, dilapidated hotel could be seen to visualize Fink's decaying mind. It could represent the degradation of the common man, the destruction of one's own self, or the broken Hollywood studio system. In the final act, when it goes up in flames, it seems to become a metaphor for hell. Fink has been taken from his comfortable home, trapped in this hovel indefinitely, and driven mad by isolation and introspection. And now it's engulfed in fire and brimstone. The argument could be made that Los Angeles itself is hell, a nightmarish place filled with demons and sinners.
Charlie, why me? Why?
Because you don't listen!
Fink's love-hate relationship with Charlie Meadows and his inability to act on his sexual desires seem to suggest repressed homosexuality. The fact that Fink and Charlie both live in a hotel means they don't have a living room to go to, so when they hang out they have to sit on the bed together. When the detectives ask if he and Charlie had a sexual relationship, Fink is offended by the question and vehemently denies it.
Sex? He's a man. We wrestled. Lipnick's description of Fink's screenplay as fruity further hammers home the queer coding of the character.
The big unanswered question at the end of Barton Fink is, who killed Audrey? The easiest reading is that Charlie did it. Fink is told that Charlie's real name is Carl Munt and he's a serial killer who decapitates his victims. But Audrey wasn't decapitated, so it doesn't fit his MO, although he could have cut off her head when he disposed of the body. Upon his return, he did give Fink a suspiciously head-sized package.
Oh, what's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
But while Fink holds on to the package and even takes it to the beach with him at the end of the film, he never actually opens it. A much darker reading is that there is no mystery, and what happened to Audrey is exactly what it looks like. Fink killed her. He was so desperate to break free from the monotony of writer's block that he did something unspeakable. Then he was so racked with guilt that he concocted an elaborate story about Charlie's double life as a serial killer to absolve himself. After all, we know he has a good imagination. The script that Fink ultimately hands in is implied to be a word-for-word recreation of the play we saw him staging in the opening scene. I think the Coens are shrewdly observing that an artist can torture themselves striving for greatness, put everything they have into a new project, and end up just reproducing something they've already done before, something the Coens have always desperately tried to avoid. It's the old adage that a writer only has one story to tell and just keeps finding new ways to tell it. When he submits the script to Lipnick, the studio head, Lipnick dismisses it as a fruity movie about suffering. He wanted a straightforward wrestling film that would appeal to mainstream audiences. But Fink has come up with a pensive art film that happens to involve a wrestler.
The audience wants to see action, adventure, wrestling, and plenty of it. They don't want to see a guy wrestling with his soul.
Lipnick just wants a B-movie with a lot of fight scenes that the audience won't have to think about. The Coens are satirizing the eternal conflict of what filmmakers want to do versus what the industry demands from them. Fink's tragically unwinnable battle with Lipnick has only become more and more relevant as rock'em sock'em superheroes have dominated multiplexes, and mid-budget movies for grown-ups have become a forgotten relic. The final scene of Barton Fink brings the movie full circle, but it's pretty confusing. After learning he'll be trapped in a creative limbo, with no ownership of his work, writing scripts that will never be produced, Fink heads down to the beach to stare at the crashing waves. And then a beautiful woman comes and sits down in front of him, bringing to life the picture that's been hanging over his desk ever since he got to LA. Initially, that picture seemed like a bit of visual irony, with the Coens contrasting an image of a lush, sunny paradise with the dingy grimness of the hotel it's hanging in. But over the course of the film, Fink came to realize that this picture staring at him throughout his workday represents the phoniness of mass entertainment, the phoniness he'll have to embrace if he wants to become a successful screenwriter. In the final scene, that phony image finds its way into his reality. Not only is it a delightfully surreal note to end the film on, it also suggests there's a possible compromise to meet somewhere in the middle between the amicable phoniness of Hollywood entertainment and the profundity of art that reflects real life. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.